very common mistake that people make is they start going about treating symptoms rather than the problem itself. It doesn't matter if you've got a state-of-art generative AI strategy. Unless your upstream and downstream partners are also aligned, it's not going to do much good.
Chandan Trehan, a recognized thought leader in digital transformation and supply chain innovation, currently leading the digital transformation of supply chains and sustainability efforts at Bosch USA.
If we do these things correctly, I don't think any POCs are going to fail.
Welcome to Supply Chain Optimizers, the show that uncovers the controversial strategies and candid stories of innovators and disruptors from some of the world's largest supply chain operations. Let's cut through the noise and optimize your logistics and supply chain, one bold idea at a time. Welcome back to Supply Chain Optimizers. Today, we're thrilled to be joined by Chandan Trehan, a recognized thought leader in digital transformation and supply chain innovation. Chandan has over a decade of experience driving large-scale transformation initiatives. Chandan is currently leading the digital transformation of supply chains and sustainability efforts at Bosch USA. His expertise spans AI, blockchain, IoT, circular economy strategies, the whole gamut, helping organizations navigate the complexities of modern supply chains. In this episode, we will explore how AI, blockchain, IoT, and other emerging technologies are redefining supply chain processes, the role of emerging technologies in driving sustainability, and what's next for the future of supply chain optimization. Chandan, welcome to the show. Super excited to have you here.
Thank you. Likewise.
So to kick us off, can you walk us through your career path and what led you to specialize in supply chain innovation and digital transformation?
Thanks, Diego. Honestly, I come from a logistics family. My father and my grandfather used to run a logistics business in India. So a large part of supply chain and logistics came to me very naturally, even from a very young age. And I was very lucky in my earlier part of the career where I was working with a large, one of the world's largest manufacturing companies. And we were working with their railroad manufacturing division. And that kind of spiked my interest in the multimodal transportation, railroads, land, air, water freight. So yeah, and since then I've been very lucky, had multiple opportunities to work in this space. And in innovation, of course, I think all organizations talk about it. Bosch is no different, but at Bosch, we take innovation very seriously. We are extremely committed to innovation. For 140 years of existence, obviously, we have kind of reinvented innovatively multiple times in the process. As an employee, it is always encouraged in Bosch to look at more innovative products, more innovative ideas and solutions that can help us. So yeah, that's what brought me here.
Pretty cool. You recently made a post on social media about how digital transformation, right, really starts with diagnosis, not with deployment. I found this very, very insightful, right? Because a lot of people immediately jump to solutions rather than really focusing and taking the time to figure out the problem and diagnosing the problem. So how do you go about diagnosing specifically supply chain problems to dive in?
So I'm going to tell you something contrary to what you're going to hear from most people. Usually people who suggest it starts by, setting the objectives, identifying the business impacts and so on. I believe that it cannot start from there. It has to start from some sort of a benchmarking analysis exercise. Because to be really honest, for any for-profit business, there are going to be some standard 3 or 4 large motherhood objectives that you would be looking at. Obviously, you have to improve your top line, you have to reduce your cost, increase productivity, be more sustainable. Those things actually mean nothing unless you put an analytical and objective value to it. So when you're talking about reducing your scrap, are you talking about reducing your scrap from X percentage to X minus delta percentage? Unless you do that kind of an analysis, that kind of a benchmarking exercise, it's very difficult to set an objective goal. It's only after you set those objective goals that you should now start looking at what are those breakages, what are those bottlenecks that are actually preventing you to achieve that goal. When you do that, and only after you have done that, you need to start looking at what are those right use cases and solutions that you need to bring in that can help you solve that problem. I've seen people do it the other way. A very common mistake that people make is they start going about treating symptoms rather than the problem itself. So I've heard people come in and say, we need a Gen AI-based vendor chatbot to address all our vendor queries. We get too many of those queries. A lot of time is being spent within the organization to answer those queries. Let's look at some sort of a chatbot that kind of answers those queries. It's a big problem if you're starting from there. A bigger question at this point is, why do your vendors need to ask these many questions to you? Is there something that you can solve at that point rather than looking at a solution that can help you do what is probably an inefficient system as it exists today? So it's important that we do this kind of an exercise from assessment to identifying the right problem rather than just the symptoms and the issues that you're facing, and then eventually get to a point where you're doing the right POCs and those pilot programs. In a large scale transformation program, in all likelihood, there are many ways in which things may or may not go the way you have planned. So it's important that you run those small projects, those small experiments on time, and make sure that you have enough time for you to pivot in case if some of those are not going the way that you had originally planned. So it's important to have those POCs, pilots, and those kind of programs aligned and put out well ahead in the roadmap so that you have enough time to manage that change as and when it happens.
Very interesting. And we'll chat a little bit about how do you actually align those pilots and some of your experience around running some of these pilots. But yeah, this is an area I'm deeply passionate about, right? Like, how do you identify the right problems to work on, right? And there's a bunch of methodologies, but it really does come down to the question of how do you identify those problems? And so in that vein, what are the biggest challenges you see these days, right? Specifically for tier one suppliers for the auto industry. What are these big supply chain challenges that you've identified?
Honestly, I think the way the industry was aligned maybe a decade ago versus how it is aligned today is very different. There was a phase when all tier one automotive suppliers and automotive companies were looking at improving their own IT systems, bringing in the best of the solutions, bringing in ERPs, MES, all kind of digital transformation within themselves. Now that game has changed a little bit. People have realized that it requires you to be a little bit more collaborative in terms of information and data sharing for you to achieve the highest level of efficiency. It doesn't matter if you've got a state-of-art agentic AI, generative AI strategy for your organization. Unless your upstream and downstream partners are also to a certain level aligned to your strategy, it's not going to do much good. So I think it's also a little bit of a mindset change and also a little bit of a technology issue that we face today. How do you exchange that data, make that data available to your partners in a more cyber secure way, and at the same time you change that mindset that your data does not necessarily have to be with you alone. There's so much power in collaboration. So I think some of those challenges that we are seeing in the industry are aligned to these kind of things. It's a mindset as well as a technology issue as we speak.
You've really did touch a little bit earlier on, you have to run small experiments, right? Align POCs. Some years ago, you wrote a piece about how blockchain POCs, blockchain specifically, were really failing to translate into full contracts. And you cited up a couple of explanations, right? Saying amongst them that blockchain wasn't mature enough, right? Or that the value in the pilots wasn't enough to justify a purchase. Do you think this is happening today in the world of AI?
I think in general, this is how hype curves work, right? So people and organizations, sometimes they tend to expect too much from a technology too early. I've seen people at both ends of the spectrum where they say, oh my God, this technology is in, it changes everything that we've been doing up to this point, and now there's going to be a new way of doing business. And then there are people on the other end of the spectrum who say, oh, no, this changes nothing. Our problems are not something that this technology alone can solve. I think the answer lies somewhere in realistic pragmatism, understanding what is realistically possible with that technology at that point of time. It's important to remember that the technology itself is also evolving. So it does not necessarily mean that what technology can do today is the end all of what technology could do. So there is a realism that has to be brought in about what technology can do at this point of time, and that has to be kind of coupled with pragmatism. What does it mean for your organization? See, only because a new technology has been brought in and you or your organization feels enamored by that technology, your problems necessarily haven't changed. Don't look for identifying new problems that this technology could solve. Look at what your existing problems are, and some of these problems, honestly, they haven't really changed from a lot of time, from a long time. People wanted to know where their products are going to reach them 50 years ago versus today. Maybe 50 years ago it used to be horse taking a scroll and getting it to the person. Then we got to letters, then we got to telephone, then we got to email. Today it's probably a mobile app that gives you real-time information. But if you really think about it, The need itself hasn't really changed. So when you're looking at POCs and pilots, understand what that need is. Oftentimes people forget or ignore that need and look at the technology and see what can this technology do for my organization. That's not the right way to approach this. Second thing that I feel oftentimes people make a mistake around this is to scope your POCs and pilots right. Understand what is it that requires you to do a proof of concept. Again, so I go back to the old example that I had given, a vendor chatbot, um, generative AI, flavor of the month, right? So let's have a highly contextualized vendor chatbot that gives a state of art experience for our vendors. Now, great problem to solve, great project to look at, but understand what part of this project needs to be a part of your proof of concept. Do you need a state of art UI UX? Probably not. Do you need extremely hyper contextualization in this case? Probably not. See, integrating with your knowledge systems is something that has been done for years in the industry. You do not need to do a proof of concept, or you do not need to include that in your proof of concept. UI UX, we have achieved probably the best of UI UX in the world. You do not need to include that in the proof of concept. So understand what is the real scope of your proof of concept, minimize that scope, which is going to make sure that your POC itself gets reduced from what could have been in 8 weeks to maybe 2 to 3 weeks, which kind of reduces the cost that you invest, gives you a better ROI, and gives you a more clear line of sight of what the project can and cannot do for you, rather than you having to wait for a long time only to realize that. And you would be surprised by the number of POCs and pilots that organizations have running at any given point of time with any new technology that comes in. So understand what those needs are first and foremost. Do not think that there is a new need that has come in because there is a new technology that is available. Second, understand what should be the scope of that POC. Limit the scope of that POC. Imagine it to be, or consider it to be only a proof of what really needs to be proven. Something that is already proven does not need to be in the scope. Reduce the duration for which you run POCs, and make sure that you have a very clearly defined business objective that ties out of that POC. I think if we do these kind of things correctly, I don't think any POCs are going to fail.
That's yeah, I really hadn't heard this concept of don't think there's a new problem just because there's new technology. I'm now gonna I'm going to adopt that. That's a very insightful comment, right? Don't think there's a new problem just because there's new technology to solve whatever it is, right? Like maybe you still have the same problems, just focus on those problems. And yeah, sure, there might be new tools, right? But the problem's still the fundamental of what you're trying to get at and trying to solve. You did piece together a bunch of thoughts and ideas, but if you could be, somewhat the 20-second summary of what makes a successful pilot successful, what would be your advice for, anyone hearing this?
It's standard. Go back to the basics. The ROI for that has to be very clearly defined. You have to define the success factor, success criteria for the POC. Why do you want to really do it? And it has to be tied to an existing problem. More often than not, people do a POC, it comes out to be successful, and then when it comes to a full-scale rollout, people realize that it's not really that big a problem. For the kind of money that I'm going to spend to solve this problem, it's not going to create that kind of an impact. And it always happens when you do not have a clear problem statement or a clear need defined for that POC.
And I have to ask, did you eventually find a great use case for blockchain in supply chain?
See, again, a lot of these things that I'm saying, I would be honest, I've been guilty of making some of these mistakes myself. I've learned from those. And what I'm suggesting today is probably coming from maybe hundreds of failures and a few successes that I've had in the process. So yes, blockchain as a technology, I think there is a very good use case. But there is a lot that has to be solved at the technology level today versus what has to be solved at the problem statement or the use case level. So exchanging data, democratizing data, I think that's going to be the way forward. If it is not happening today, it's probably going to happen 5 or 8 years down the line, but it's definitely going to be there. It's going to be one of the biggest use cases in the world.
Now, to wrap up this kind of narrative around pilots and going from pilot to, full-blown product and paying for it and using it, how do you go about it, right? Okay, I've proven impact. I've proven that, all right, I've solved this very specific problem within these parameters. Now, how do you scale a solution internally, right? How do you go from a pilot to a full-blown org-wide implementation?
So there are actually two aspects to this. First and foremost, when you're looking at a product like this, understand that you don't have to look at that product from a very siloed point of view. what this product can do. You have to, now that you're looking at the product, looking at this product to be rolled out at a organization wide scale, look at the impact of this product in the given IT landscape, because now this product is going to start interacting with your existing IT system. So have that global versus local view of that product, have that short term versus long term view of that product, how this product is going to evolve, how your IT landscape is going to evolve with or without that product over a period of time, depending on the kind of product that you're looking at. Consider the TCO, including the hidden cost for that product when you're going for a full scale rollout. It's very critical. Understand what is the opportunity cost for these things to happen. And when you're doing that, it is, well, I'm a huge proponent of the fact that change management is not something that has to happen after the product launch is done. Change management is something that has to begin from the day you conceptualize that product. Make sure that your stakeholders, your users are involved in the process. They should feel as much a part of the building process as they feel that they are going to be the end users. Only when they feel that this is something that they have also adequately contributed to, it is extremely difficult for them to start making them use a product that is just pushed down to them. So when you're looking at moving from a pilot to a full scale rollout, look at the larger scheme of things as well, and make sure that you have those right users identified, who are those the early adopters, who are those change champions that you're going to work very closely with to make sure that the propagation for this solution happens throughout the organization.
Now, you did mention as one of the biggest problems that you've diagnosed in your current role, data sharing and the ability to collaborate across upstream and downstream partners, right? I'm curious to ask, what do you consider to be the most promising technology in solving that specific challenge and other challenges that you might have right now? What's really exciting to you currently?
I think first and foremost, of course, democratization of data is going to be a big thing. People to share that information, making sure that you have a safe mechanism to share that information with your partners is going to be critical. But other big technologies, I think AI is going to play a very, very critical role in the supply chains of the future. If I look at predictive analytics, supply chain digital twins, to maybe control towers, to autonomous planning systems, we are living in very exciting times. The way the entire business operations are being done today are going to be transformed with technologies like AI. The workforce is going to change significantly with technology like AI. I think in another 3 years time frame, we are going to have humans working along with bots, agents, AI agents. So the role of the manager himself or herself is going to change significantly. It's not only going to be making sure that you have more and more people who are doing a type of task for you, but also making sure that the software itself performs right alongside the people who are doing some of the more creative aspect of the work. So I think these two technologies are going to be very fundamental in shaping the supply chains for 5 years from today.
That's also a very thought-provoking idea, right? Like if you are a manager, right, or someone in their career, right, just basically working on any department, especially related to supply chain and logistics, you will not be responsible only for managing a team, but you might also be responsible for managing a team of agents, right? A team of interconnected AI systems making decisions somewhat autonomously, somewhat not, and you are managing that, right? I don't know if you have some thoughts about people's careers going into the future and how to better or best prepare for this future that you've laid out here.
I think at the end of the day, and this is a very popular saying, it was floating on multiple social media channels. AI is not going to take your job. Somebody who knows how to use AI is going to take your job, and I very strongly believe that. See, if you really look at an AI agent, the idea is once you tell that AI agent that this is something that you have to do, it becomes that agent's goal for life. All that it's going to do for the rest of its lifespan until it's asked to stop is just do that one activity. So what does that mean? All the routine, mundane tasks that can be defined in steps are going to be taken up by AI through agents. What is going to be left is going to be more creative problem solving for we as humans. And those things that cannot be really defined in steps. So I think that's going to be the future of work. We will be forced to be creative. Up to this point, creativity was a state of mind, temperament. It used to be, I'm not built that way. I don't and be creative. But I think 3 to 4 years down the line, that's going to be the way the jobs are going to be. Every job is going to expect you to be creative because all routine work will be done by agents.
I also think that a key skill to have in the future is how do you become, or how does one become, a world class diagnoser of problems, right? How do you go in, know how to ask the right questions, know how to interview people, know how to take, a lens into what's happening to come up with the right problems to solve? I do think that's perhaps the key skill of the future if everything else is going to be taken away.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also important for people to start understanding what AI can do today. That is why we call this as AI literacy. There's a certain amount of AI literacy that has to happen for every individual. They should understand what AI can do. And when they understand that, it's also equally important for them to start questioning their job description. And what part of my job can actually be taken by AI? And when they do that, they have to start also thinking, and it's not like it's going to happen tomorrow. You still have time to do that. You still have at least 2 years to do that. And when you start asking those questions, you start framing the response as to what is it that you're bringing onto the table, which cannot be defined by, say, 6 or 7 steps that could be automated tomorrow. And it's a good way to start creatively looking at your job description, start creatively looking at what you're doing in your organization. And if it requires you to bring in identify problems, see how best you can do it, rather than using just a typical framework that goes and says that I'm going to ask 15 questions, and based on that I'm going to identify where does your organization lie, and based on where your organization lies, I'm going to give you, say, 10 use cases to get to the right level. That's something that AI can do. So, what is that creative element that you're bringing onto your job that's going to differentiate you from an agentic AI? So, we're not competing with people anymore, interestingly. We're competing with engines now.
So, speaking of AI literacy, I'm pretty sure that you, in your position and your long career in innovation, you've seen some real world examples. Can you tell us about maybe your 1 or 2 favorite examples of real world problems that AI is today solving and actually being deployed at scale?
So, a very common example comes from warehousing operations. Uh, if you really look at it, warehouses are supposed to be boring places, right? Yeah. You receive goods, you store them at a place, you pick those goods out, give them away. So it's just a place where inventory is being held and dispatched out. One of the biggest challenge that we have in the industry today is around 55 to 60% of the time in a large warehouse is spent in the retrieval systems or storage systems. There is so much automation and AI that can be brought in that space. AI can help you better plan your warehouse layouts, identify what are those products which are having a little bit of seasonality associated to it, making sure that you place them in a place where you can move them much faster. Uh, a lot of these dark stores that we are typically talking about are operating on these concepts. See, it's also important to remember organizations that achieved overnight delivery or a single day delivery did not do that by putting more inventory in the supply chain. They did that by planning their supply chains better. They did that by adding an element of artificial intelligence, an element of predictability in their supply chains. Organizations who do that know well in advance that these number of people in this region are going to order this particular product. So let me plan my supply chain, upstream part of my supply chain accordingly. So I think that's one of the biggest areas where supply chain transformation is happening. AGVs, AMRs, that's another big segment. Making sure that 55-60% of the time that is spent in storage and retrieval in a warehouse can be automated significantly if you have a system that operates on a system like AGV and AMR. So I think these are two very wonderful use cases that we are already seeing in the industry today.
One of the most intriguing things I've ever heard about warehouses was the director of supply chain for the Magnum ice cream company. He said, a few months ago that his bet is that eventually every single warehouse in the world will be completely pitch dark. What do you think of this?
I would say fully dark warehouse is at the extreme edge of automation. The value lies in intelligent orchestration, where human and automation and robots cooperate. Where, like I said, automation and robots, they handle the more repetitive, more dangerous tasks like retrieval, storage, those kind of things, while human focus on more creative problem solving like exception handling, quality related issues, continuous improvement, identifying opportunities to make your warehouses more lean, make your warehouses more, to improve the visibility of your inventory in the warehouse operation. So I think it's going to be, I think the value lies in intelligent automation or intelligent orchestration with human and see, technically it is definitely possible today. As we speak, it is 100% possible that we will live in a world which does not have any humans in the warehouses at all. But my personal opinion is the value is in making sure that you have humans and the right kind of automation brought in.
Yeah, obviously, I'm referring to have a white paper, right, on next gen warehousing. And yeah, you clearly have spent a lot of time thinking about these problems. What else can you tell us that's interesting about this space and the technology that you're seeing coming out of or to solve the warehousing problems?
I spoke about digital orchestration, making sure that there is that intelligent orchestration that happens, human machines working together. There has to be a right level of AI optimization that has to be brought in, right from planning your warehousing to making more modular designs in your warehouse, having the right kind of manpower planning in your warehouse using AI and automation. Certain times of the year require you to have more. On-field workers, making sure that you have your workforce planning accordingly done. And I think often not spoken in this aspect, but the sustainability part of warehousing operation, energy optimization, circular packaging, because a lot of these packaging work now happens, value-added services, these things now happen at the warehouse. So making sure that you have got right kind of sustainability aspects also taken into consideration when you're looking at a warehouse of the future. I think those things become very critical.
You have, you obviously enjoy writing and researching. You also wrote a research white paper about data being the key to long-term resilience. Well, first, can you elaborate on this idea that data is the key to long-term resilience?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, making sure that supply chain resilience basically requires you to make sure that one, you're supposed to be planned for the future. So that happens by understanding what are the ways in which things have gone wrong in the past, making sure that you build in the right level of predictability in your supply chain, run those simulations on your supply chain to understand what if there's a geopolitical failure or some sort of mishap that happens in a particular part of the world. How does your supply chain react? When you have these kind of simulations identified and run it helps you to create a failure plan, some sort of process that helps you react to these kind of challenges as and when they happen. So stress testing and all these things are very data intensive programs. So I think that is where the resilience piece comes in from. It just helps you be a little bit more prepared or better prepared for something that could happen in the future. There's one statement, and I often make this: heaven forbid COVID situation ever happens again. Organizations have invested heavily on data and building the right kind of AI analytics and intelligence in their supply chains. Those organizations are going to perform a little different versus others who haven't invested in if a COVID-like situation was to happen again. See, when it happened for the first time, I think everybody was taken aback. Nobody had any plan or had practically zero understanding of what can they do to deal with a situation like this. But it's going to be very different. Heaven forbid it never happens, but if it ever happens, it's going to be very different. Some organizations are going to be much better prepared for a situation like that. A lot of those ties to the resiliency, and that comes from making sure that you have got the right kind of data collection and right kind of intelligence that is built on the supply chain systems.
Yeah, and you seem to also in that same paper about data being data being the long-term resilience play. You also seem to be a big proponent of supply chain control towers, right? And it's interesting because this concept that has been around forever, for as long as I can remember. So much so that I still hey, is this still a thing, right? Some people still question, is this still a thing? So yeah, why do you think it's still pretty much, or maybe it's the moment for supply chain control towers?
I mean, it's still a thing. Of course, albeit it has to go through its natural progression from what it used to be earlier, largely as a visibility platform that brings data from diverse data sources in your organization or to some level outside your organization onto a platform, from being that pure visibility system to now being more predictive, prescriptive, or autonomous system that helps you heal your supply chains in case of any kind of issues, helps you build that long-term resiliency in your supply chain. So that's a natural progression that the control towers have to go through. So I would say they are still a thing today, but they're not what they used to be 3 years ago. They have significantly transformed with the new technology that has come in. I would so more interesting ways of calling a control tower today is a nerve center or a decision hub or a command center that helps you anticipate, respond, and optimize your supply chain to a certain level with a certain level of autonomy in the process.
Yeah, very algorithmic based, I would imagine.
Yes, from what it used to be.
What is one piece of advice that you'd have for people starting their career in supply chain today?
So my piece of advice is cultivate both system thinking and pair it up with a little bit of curiosity. Supply chain as an industry is not one of the earliest adopters for any technology. It's not fintech of the world. So when you are working in this space, understand that you will have to be cognizant that there are ways in which things have been happening in the past. Take time to understand why something is being done a particular way that it is done. But at the same time, also question that if there is a better technology that exists today, or there is more information or data that exists today, is there a better way of doing that? So do not come with a thought process that I'm going to use the technology to change the way and change supply chain entirely from what it is today. So stay curious, but at the same time have that capability to zoom out when needed to understand what is the impact that different functions in your organizations are going to have on your supply chain. But at the same time also have the capability to zoom in when needed to solve some of those operational issues. So it's really a balancing act. It's very fun if you right, and it's probably can be your biggest headache. It's going to keep you up at nights if you fail to miss any of these. So that's my only suggestion.
Second question: looking ahead, what excites you the most about the future of logistics and supply chain?
I think it's that intelligent orchestration that I spoke about, the human and AI working together. The role that managers are going to have in future is going to be very different. Identifying the newer, more creative aspects of your role. I think that's something that really makes me feel very excited about the way things are happening today. The digital transformation as a subject itself is going to change significantly in the age of agentic AI. It's not going to be just identifying those use cases alone, but also looking at what is it that requires a human to solve this problem. What is it that requires a bot to be built to solve this problem? So supply chains are going to be more self-healing, self-optimizing. They're going to act as intelligent networks which are more resilient and more agile. So those are the things that really get me more excited about the future in supply chain.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty, non-obvious thing to be excited about, right? Like, how are humans going to play together with this technology? But as a closing question, any trends or innovations? Maybe if you have another non-obvious trend or innovation that you think are going to reshape the industry in the next 2 years.
I think AI agents are going to be more prominent. That's one of the biggest trends that I'm observing now. Our supply chains today still, unfortunately or fortunately, have a lot of work which is very, very manual. From making sure that the right product is going out of your warehouse to making sure that the last mile delivery happens at the right doorstep. There is so much manual work that is happening. A lot of big role for AI to come in and solve that problem. But yeah, that's what I think.
Fantastic, Chandan. Thank you so much for being on today. Really, I got a lot of snippets that I'm sure I'm going to start using from now on. Really appreciate you being on. Thank you very much for sharing the time with us.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
That's a wrap on today's deep dive with Supply Chain Optimizers. If you found value in our controversial tactics and data-driven stories, don't forget to hit follow and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Have a burning question or want to share your own optimization success? Connect with me, Diego Solorzano, on LinkedIn, or for more information on how we can help you transform your supply chain and logistics operations, visit thesteya.com. Thanks for listening.